India, one of the key strategic partners of the United States in Asia and a long-standing ally of Washington, now risks turning from a pillar of American foreign policy into the most unexpected challenge for Donald Trump's administration. When Trump returned to the White House, one of the first directions of his foreign policy activity was to establish a special relationship with New Delhi. The White House saw India not only as a counterweight to China in the Indo-Pacific region, but also as a potential energy partner that could play a decisive role in restructuring global oil flows after the imposition of restrictions against Moscow. In the first months of his new presidential term, Trump did everything to strengthen his personal contact with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. According to the Washington Sentinel, the two leaders held regular closed video conferences to discuss major energy projects, supplies of American liquefied natural gas, and joint infrastructure initiatives. Trump personally offered India preferential terms for purchasing energy resources and guarantees of long-term supplies, hoping that New Delhi would gradually abandon Russian raw materials and become a reliable element of his energy strategy. Reality, however, turned out to be far more complicated. Bloomberg energy data shows that despite assurances from Indian officials about a gradual reduction of Russian oil imports, purchase volumes have not fallen, but have instead reached historic highs in recent months. Satellite images and logistics agency reports confirm that Indian refineries continue to receive tankers with Russian oil in previous and sometimes even larger volumes. This has caused serious concern in Washington. Several sources in the U.S. National Security Council told Politico that heated discussions have begun within the administration over how to respond to India's dual-track policy. Trump initially did not want to apply pressure. He relied on agreements, incentives, and long-term strategic projects. But as it became clear that New Delhi was not planning to abandon cheap Russian energy resources, the White House began to shift tactics. Trump was confident he could persuade Modi through economic incentives and personal arrangements, said a source familiar with the negotiations. But now everything indicates that India has chosen its own course, and that course runs counter to American strategy. The situation is further complicated by the fact that energy cooperation between Russia and India is increasingly taking on the character of long-term political alignment. According to Eurasia Strategic Outlook, Moscow and New Delhi are not limiting themselves to oil trade. They are discussing joint investment projects in petrochemicals, refining and logistics, as well as a transition to settlements in national currencies, bypassing the dollar. These steps directly contradict Trump's plans to increase financial pressure on Moscow. For Washington, losing India could be a strategic failure. India is the world's second most populous country, a rapidly growing economy, and a key player on the global energy map. If it firmly consolidates its alliance with Russia, Trump risks facing the formation of a powerful geopolitical bloc capable of undermining the foundations of American energy strategy and shifting the balance of power in Eurasia. The White House understands the seriousness of the situation. According to Financial Herald, Trump has instructed his advisors to prepare a new roadmap for relations with New Delhi. According to sources close to the administration, this roadmap includes both a set of diplomatic steps and more subtle economic mechanisms designed to bring India back into the orbit of American interests. Among the options being considered are expanding Indian companies' access to U.S. markets, deepening cooperation in high technology, and launching joint defense programs with the participation of major American corporations. At the same time, tougher measures are also on the table, including the possibility of imposing secondary sanctions against Indian oil traders and revising tariff agreements. But Washington fully understands that any pressure could have the opposite effect. India today is not a dependent partner, but an independent power confidently pursuing its own foreign economic policy. In New Delhi, the rhetoric of a multipolar world and strategic autonomy is growing louder. As the Economic Times notes, the Modi government is not ready to give up lucrative contracts for the sake of abstract political loyalty. Moreover, Indian analysts openly state that cheap Russian oil helps contain inflation inside the country, support industry, and ensure energy security, something Western suppliers cannot offer. Moscow is exploiting this situation with maximum pragmatism. Russian oil companies under sanctions pressure have effectively redirected their export flows to India. offering New Delhi exclusive discounts and flexible payment schemes. According to Global Oil Review, by the autumn of 2025, India had become the largest buyer of Russian oil, surpassing even China in the volume of certain shipments. The Russian side has also offered Indian companies participation in the development of fields in eastern Siberia and the Arctic, which could make India a key player in Russia's long-term energy projects. American think tanks are already sounding the alarm. A recent report by the Atlantic Policy Institute states that the growing energy partnership between Moscow and New Delhi has every chance of turning into a stable strategic alliance capable of challenging American influence in Eurasia. The authors note that if the United States does not take decisive action in the coming months, Washington risks losing not just a market but a critical geopolitical foothold. Another layer of this story is geopolitical. India has long sought to position itself as an independent center of power, unwilling to be a tool in the hands of any bloc. Closer ties with Russia essentially give New Delhi greater room for maneuver in negotiations with Washington and Beijing. As Eurasia Strategic Outlook observes, Indian leadership is deliberately using the Russian vector as leverage. The stronger the energy ties with Moscow, the greater the bargaining space with the US. For Trump, this is turning into a serious test. His foreign policy strategy was built on strengthening old alliances and creating new economic blocs, but India is increasingly acting as an independent player rather than an ally. Losing New Delhi's trust would mean not just a diplomatic setback, but a potential shift in the center of gravity of US-Asian policy. According to Politico, a series of high-level contacts between the White House and Indian leadership is planned in the coming weeks. A visit by the Secretary of State to New Delhi is under discussion, as well as a new package of proposals intended to persuade India to reduce purchases of Russian oil. But the success of this mission remains uncertain. New Delhi today feels confident and is in no hurry to change course, especially against the backdrop of growing mutual benefits with Moscow. If Washington fails to quickly find a balance between pressure and incentives, India may ultimately solidify a new type of relationship with Moscow, in which economic benefit outweighs political commitments. For Trump, this would not just be a diplomatic blow, but a signal to allies around the world that even the closest partners can act against American interests. Experts are already forecasting the possible formation of a stable Russia-India energy bloc, capable of redistributing oil flows and weakening the role of the dollar in settlements. Such a scenario poses long-term risks for US containment policy and could shift the balance of power in key regions of Eurasia. The White House understands that the window of opportunity for maneuver is rapidly narrowing.